Darius Cole was 38 years old, and for 4 years he believed he had built exactly the life his discipline deserved. A senior logistics manager, a good husband, a man his mother was proud of. Every Friday for 8 months, his wife Petra told him she was working late. He never questioned it, never checked. That was the kind of man he was, steady, trusting, certain of the people he loved. Then one Friday, a cancelled meeting put him 40 minutes from her office with a dinner reservation and nothing but good intentions. He parked across the street. He did not text her. He wanted to see her face light up when she saw him standing there. Instead, at 7:12 in the evening, Petra walked out of the building's side door, dressed differently, carrying a small purse, laughing at her phone. A black Audi pulled to the curb, and Darius recognized the driver immediately. What he watched happen next would cost 3 people everything they thought they had secured. But sitting in that car, completely still, Darius hadn't moved yet. He was just beginning to understand what he was actually looking at. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from and subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The rooting problem had been bothering Darius since Tuesday, not in a way that kept him up at night. He wasn't built like that. But in the quiet, persistent way a loose thread bothers a careful man. He'd pull at it, set it down, come back to it. By Thursday afternoon, sitting at his desk with a cold cup of coffee and 3 monitors worth of freight data, he finally found it. A relay point in the Shreveport leg was adding 11 hours to a 2-day haul. Simple fix once you saw it. Obvious, but you had to be willing to look at the whole system before you could find where the system was lying to you. He'd submitted the revised route at 4:47 p.m. and left the office feeling the quiet, specific satisfaction of a thing set right. That was Darius Cole, 38 years old, senior logistics manager at Carmichael Freight, a man who found his peace in solved problems and trusted systems. He drove home on I-49 with the radio low, some jazz station he half listened to, the evening traffic thinning out the further he got from downtown. The city gave way to the kind of neighborhood that didn't announce itself. Clean streets, mature oak trees, houses with good bones and 2-car garages. The kind of place a man got to after years of working like it mattered. He pulled into the driveway at 6:22 p.m. The house was quiet when he walked in. Not the comfortable quiet of a home at rest, just quiet. He stood in the entryway for a moment and felt it the way you feel a temperature change. Then he set his keys on the hook by the door, the same hook he'd installed himself 3 years ago, and went to the kitchen. He made dinner for 2. Chicken, rice, something green. He set both plates on the table and checked his phone. Nothing from Petra. He knew she had a campaign in its final stretch. Something for a hotel chain, she'd mentioned it a few weeks ago. Fridays ran long, sometimes Thursdays too. He put her plate in the oven on the lowest setting and ate alone, reading the news on his phone without really absorbing any of it. This was not unusual. He couldn't have told you exactly when the dinners had gotten quiet. It hadn't happened all at once. It was more like a gradual settling, the way a house shifts on its foundation over years, so slowly that you never feel any single moment of movement. He and Petra used to talk through entire meals, about work, about travel they wanted to do, about nothing in particular. That easy back and forth that meant you were genuinely glad to be in the same room as someone. Now she ate with her phone beside her plate, tilted just slightly away from him, not hidden, just angled. She laughed at things on her screen sometimes, small private laughs that she didn't share or explain. He told himself this was just how people were now. Everyone was somewhere else, even when they were sitting right in front of you. He told himself a lot of things. He moved to the living room after he cleaned up and sat in the recliner with a logistics industry report he'd been meaning to read for 2 weeks. He made it through 4 pages before his eyes started to drag. He set the report on the side table, turned on the television, watched without watching. Petra had her Fridays. 8 months now, maybe a little more. She left before he was fully awake. 7:30 on the dot, sometimes earlier. She came home after 10. Marketing was like that in Q4, she'd explained early on. Campaigns didn't care about your schedule. He'd accepted this the way he accepted rain. You didn't argue with weather. You adjusted, and you kept moving. He heard the front door at 10:48 p.m. He was mostly asleep in the recliner by then, the television murmuring some home renovation show. He heard her heels on the hardwood, heard her set her bag down. Lighter than usual, he registered somewhere at the back of his mind. And then she was in the doorway of the living room, still in her coat. "Hey," she said, "you didn't have to wait up." "I wasn't waiting," he said, which wasn't entirely true. "Long night?" "Always." She came over and kissed him on the forehead, the way you kiss someone you're fond of but not thinking about. Then she went to the kitchen. He heard the refrigerator open and close. The smell reached him a moment after she left the room. Not perfume. He knew her perfume. This was food. The kind of smell that clings to your hair and coat. After a long dinner somewhere nice. Rich, herbed, warm. A restaurant he didn't recognize. Not the kind of place you grabbed alone after a late night at the office. He sat with that for a moment. Then he reached over, picked up the remote, and turned the television off. Everything is fine, he thought. She probably ate with a client. He closed his eyes. He was asleep in 4 minutes. The meeting got canceled at 4:15. A simple email from the regional director. Rescheduled to next Thursday. Apologies for the late notice. And just like that, Darius's entire Friday evening opened up in front of him. He sat at his desk for a moment, looking at the empty calendar block where the meeting had been. Then he thought about Petra. He couldn't remember the last time they'd had dinner downtown. A real dinner. Not takeout on the couch. Not him eating alone with her plate warming in the oven. Somewhere with tablecloths and low light. And the kind of quiet that belongs to two people choosing to be together rather than just occupying the same space. He grabbed his jacket and his keys. Her office was on Commerce Street, about 20 minutes from Carmichael's building. He knew the area well. He'd picked her up from work a handful of times in the early years of their marriage, back when that kind of thing was still easy and natural. He could park across the street and wait, watch her come through the front doors, see her face when she looked up, and found him standing there instead of the usual Friday night ride share. He wanted to see that. He realized, pulling onto the highway, how much he wanted to see her surprised and pleased by him. How long it had been since he'd tried. He didn't text her. He wanted it to be a surprise. He found parking across from her building at 6:51 p.m. and cut the engine. The street was still busy. Office workers streaming out in both directions, the city doing its Friday exhale. Her building was a 12-story glass and steel structure with a broad revolving front entrance, the kind that lit up gold in the late evening light. He watched the doors turn. Faces came and went. None of them hers. He loosened his collar and checked the time. 6:58. He was almost smiling. It was a small, private feeling, the kind that doesn't need an audience. He was going to take his wife to dinner. He was going to sit across from her and be present in a way that he'd let slide. And maybe that was enough to shift something between them. He was a man who believed in fixing things before they broke. Maybe this was the fix. Maybe it was this simple. 7:04. The revolving doors kept turning. 7:09. He shifted in his seat. Checked his mirrors out of habit. A delivery truck rumbled past. Then, at 7:12, movement caught his eye. Not from the front entrance, but from the narrow side door, the one set into the building's edge about 30 feet from the main lobby. A service exit, or a secondary one. The kind of door people used when they didn't want to be seen coming and going through the front. Petra stepped out of it. Darius went still. He recognized her immediately. Her walk, the set of her shoulders, the way she moved like she knew exactly where she was going. But she didn't look like a woman who'd been in an office all day. She had changed clothes. The blazer and slacks she'd left home in that morning were gone. She was wearing a dark dress he didn't recognize, heels that caught the light. Her work bag was gone too, replaced by a small black clutch. Her hair was down. She was laughing at something on her phone. Easy, relaxed, bright-eyed. Not the version of herself she brought home to him on Friday nights, tired and quiet and smelling like a long day. This was a different version, a version she kept somewhere he didn't have access to. He watched her step to the curb and look up from her phone. A black Audi pulled up, smooth and unhurried, like it had been circling the block once, waiting for the right moment. The window came down. Darius knew that car. A 2021 A6, black on black. A lease Andre had bragged about at their mother's birthday dinner 8 months ago. Upgraded, Andre had said, grinning, passing his phone around with a photo. A man's gotta look the part. Darius stared. Petra bent toward the open window first, said something, laughed again. And then Andre reached across from the driver's seat and pushed the passenger door open for her. The gesture of a man who had done this before, comfortable with it, at home in it. Petra slid in, and then she leaned across the console and kissed him. Not a greeting, not a quick, reflexive brush, the way you kiss someone you're fond of, but not thinking about. She kissed him the way Darius remembered being kissed, the way you kiss someone when you have been thinking about them all day. The Audi pulled away from the curb and merged into traffic and disappeared. Darius did not move. He sat in his car with both hands in his lap and watched the space where the Audi had been. The revolving front doors of Petra's building kept turning. People kept streaming out. The city kept moving through its Friday evening like nothing had changed at all. He looked at the clock on the dashboard. 7:14. He stayed in that spot for 22 minutes. He knows because he counted them. He counted the minutes the way he counted everything, steadily, without drama, needing to know the precise number, needing something to be exact, while everything else had just come apart. At 7:36 he started the car. He drove home. He stopped at a light on Jefferson and looked at his hands on the steering wheel and didn't recognize them as the hands of the same man who had left work an hour ago thinking about tablecloths and low light. He ate leftovers standing over the kitchen sink because he could not make himself sit at the table. He washed the dish. He dried it. He put it away. He was in bed when Petra came home at 10:55. He heard her heels on the hardwood, heard her set her bag down, heard her check on him from the doorway. A small sound, almost nothing. The sound of a woman confirming a man is asleep. He kept his eyes closed. He kept his breathing even. He did not say a word. She made coffee at 8:14. Darius knew because he was already awake, already sitting in the recliner with yesterday's newspaper across his lap, watching the clock the way he'd been watching it since 5 a.m. He heard the cabinet open, the grind of beans, the particular sound of Petra moving through a kitchen she'd always claimed as her territory. Efficient, practiced, unhurried. She came around the corner in her robe and smiled at him. "Morning," she said, easy and warm, like a woman with nothing on her conscience. "Morning," he said back. She handed him a mug without being asked. Remembered how he took it. No sugar, just a splash of cream, the way a good wife would. The mug was warm in his hands. He looked down at it for a moment and then looked back up at her and kept his face completely still. He was watching her now, really watching. Not the way a husband watches a wife, that comfortable, half-attentive noticing that happens in the background of a life you trust. He was watching her the way he watched a freight routing map, when something wasn't adding up, looking for the weight-bearing points, the places where the structure would crack if you pressed. She moved around the apartment like she was playing a role she'd rehearsed to the point of muscle memory. She folded laundry on the couch, neat and methodical, stacking his shirts in the specific order she knew he preferred. She asked him about his week, the Richmond distribution delay he'd mentioned on Tuesday, whether it had sorted itself out. She laughed at something she was reading on her phone and tilted the screen toward him, sharing a joke. She refilled his coffee without being asked. She was very good. That was the thing that settled in his chest like cold water. She was very, very good at this. And he had no way of knowing when the performance had started, when the version of Petra he was watching now had replaced the real one, or if they had always been the same person, and he simply hadn't been paying the right kind of attention. He answered her questions. He laughed at the right moments. He was good too, as it turned out. By 10 o'clock, she was in the shower, and Darius was standing at the kitchen window with his phone in his hand. He found Roland's name in his contacts and pressed call. Roland picked up on the second ring. "What's up, man? You got a few minutes?" "Always. What's going on?" "Just a question," Darius said. He kept his voice easy. "Level. Financial thing. If a couple has a joint savings account, hypothetically, could one person move money out of it without the other one getting notified? Like in small amounts over time?" A pause. Not long, but Roland was an accountant. He understood the architecture of that question. "Hypothetically," Roland said. "Yeah." Another pause. "Depends on the bank and the account settings. If alerts aren't enabled and the transfers go to an external account that's below reporting thresholds, then, yeah, it's possible. It happens." He stopped. "Darius, I'm good. You don't sound like a man asking a hypothetical." "I'll explain later," Darius said. "I just needed to know if it was possible." "It's possible," Roland said, quieter now. "You want me to look into something?" "Not yet. I'll call you." He hung up before Roland could ask anything else. He stood at the window for another minute, watching a neighbor across the street walk a dog through the pale Saturday morning light. Simple and ordinary. The world entirely indifferent to the thing currently dismantling itself inside this apartment. He heard the shower cut off. He went and sat back down in the recliner. For the rest of that day, through lunch, through the afternoon, through dinner at the kitchen table where Petra talked about a campaign pitch she was preparing, and he nodded and asked the right question. Darius performed his half of the marriage with the same precision she performed hers, but underneath it, he was working. He was going back through 4 years with a different set of eyes. Every late return, every weekend trip to her mother's, every conference, every girls' trip, every casual mention of Andre's name. "Your brother called? Andre asked about that restaurant? Andre thinks you should look into that investment?" And he was pressing on each one, the way you press a floorboard in a dark house, listening for the hollow sound that tells you what's underneath. He found a lot of hollow sounds. By the time Petra went to bed at 10:30, Darius had a rough shape of something. Not a complete picture yet, but enough of an outline to understand that what he had witnessed on Commerce Street last night was not the beginning of anything. It was the middle. He sat in the dark living room for a long time after her light went out. Not grieving, not raging, thinking, planning, mapping it the same way he mapped a freight network, identifying every load-bearing point before applying a single ounce of pressure. He picked up his phone and typed a message to Roland. "Need to meet in person. Soon. And bring your forensic thinking." He set the phone down on the armrest and stared at the dark ceiling. He waited for Roland's reply. Roland's office was on the 4th floor of a building downtown that smelled like old carpet and fresh coffee. Small space. Organized. 2 monitors on the desk. A whiteboard on the wall covered in numbers. A mini fridge in the corner that Roland had owned since college. It felt like a room built for thinking clearly, which was exactly why Darius had chosen it. Roland was already there when Darius arrived at 8:47 Monday morning. Door propped open. 2 cups on the desk. Darius sat down across from him and told him everything. He went through it in order, the way he always presented information. No editorializing, no emotion, just sequence. The 8 months of late Fridays, the canceled meeting, the parking spot on Commerce Street, the side door, the black Audi, the kiss, the 22 minutes he sat there counting. Roland didn't say anything while Darius talked. He sat very still, which was unusual for him. He had a pen in his hand, and at some point he stopped clicking it. When Darius finished, the room was quiet for about 4 seconds. Then Roland said, "I'm going to his apartment." "No." "Darius." "No." Darius kept his voice flat and even. "Sit down." Roland hadn't even fully stood. He lowered himself back into the chair. His jaw was tight. He set the pen on the desk with more force than necessary and pressed both hands flat on the surface like he was keeping himself in place. "You walk over there right now," Darius said. "And what happens?" He denies it. She denies it. They get the warning they need to get their stories straight and move whatever they need to move. And then they walk away clean. He paused. "I need them to not walk away clean." Roland exhaled through his nose, looked at the ceiling, looked back at Darius. "Okay," he said, and his voice had dropped into something quieter and more careful. "Okay, tell me what you need. I need to know what I'm actually looking at," Darius said, "before I do anything." He started with the phone records. Their cell plan was a shared account. Had been for 3 years. He'd never had a reason to look at Petra's call logs before. He had the account login on his phone, saved from the last time he'd upgraded his plan. Roland slid one of his monitors around so they could both see it. Darius pulled up the account, navigated to Petra's line, and opened the call history. He started with the last 8 months. Andre's number was there, consistently, predictably, often on Friday afternoons between 5 and 7 p.m. Darius had expected that. Then he scrolled back further. 12 months, 14, 18. The number kept appearing. Darius scrolled back to the earliest records the account kept, 22 months ago, and sat there looking at the screen without speaking. Andre's number was there. It had always been there, regular as a heartbeat. But what stopped him cold was the pattern underneath the pattern. He pulled up his own work calendar on his phone, the digital one he'd maintained for years, every conference, every overnight trip, every week he'd been out of town. He laid the 2 timelines next to each other. The calls clustered. Every single time Darius had been away for work, the frequency spiked. Not randomly, surgically. She knew his schedule, Roland said quietly, reading the same thing Darius was reading. "She knew mine," Darius said. He set the phone down and moved to the credit card history next. Their joint card. He went back 14 months and scrolled slowly, scanning for anything that hadn't registered at the time. He found it inside of 2 minutes. A charge from a place called the Elmore, a boutique hotel 40 minutes south of their apartment. $312, a Saturday and Sunday in October, 14 months ago. Darius had been in Atlanta that weekend for a regional freight conference. He remembered it clearly because there had been a dinner the second night that ran long, and he'd called Petra from the hotel bar just before midnight to say goodnight. She had sounded tired, said she was at her mother's, needed a couple of days away from the apartment, some quiet. He had told her that sounded like a good idea, and to tell Celeste, he said hello. He stared at the charge on the screen. Then he picked up his phone, found the hotel's number, and called. A woman answered on the 3rd ring, bright and professional. Darius asked her, calmly and without any particular inflection, whether he could confirm a previous reservation. He gave the dates. There was a brief pause as she typed. "Yes, sir. I'm showing a reservation for that weekend. Under the name Cole. Andre Cole." "Thank you," Darius said. "That's all I needed." He ended the call. He placed the phone face down on Roland's desk. He sat back in the chair and looked at the wall for a moment, not at anything specific, just at the flat white surface of it. Roland didn't say anything. He understood what silence was for. Finally, Darius said, "I need to know how deep this goes before I do anything." The next 2 days, Darius went to work. He drove in at his usual time. He answered emails. He approved 2 freight routing changes and sat through a Tuesday morning status call without losing focus, once. He came home both evenings, ate dinner with Petra, and asked her about her day. She told him. He listened. He watched her mouth move and heard the words, and filed them in the part of his brain that was running a separate process entirely. She didn't know. He was sure of that. He was counting on it. Roland called Wednesday evening, just after 7. Darius was in the kitchen washing a dish when the phone buzzed on the counter. He looked at the screen, dried his hands, and walked to the back of the apartment, their small second bedroom that he used as a home office, and closed the door behind him. "I need you to come in," Roland said. He didn't sound angry. He sounded the way he sounded when numbers had told him something he hadn't wanted to find. "Tomorrow morning," Darius said. "Yeah." He went back to the kitchen and finished the dishes. Roland's office looked the same as it always did. 2 monitors, the whiteboard, the mini-fridge humming softly in the corner. Roland was already standing when Darius arrived. He had a printed document in his hand, 2 pages, stapled, and he set it on the desk in front of the empty chair without preamble. Darius sat down and looked at it. It was a summary. Dates in the left column. Amounts in the middle. A private account number in the right column. The same one repeating down the page like a refrain. He read through it once, then again. The transfers were small, never more than $800 at a time. Some were as low as $250. They had started 8 months ago, almost to the week of when the late Fridays began, and they had never stopped. Regular intervals, always sized just below the threshold that would have triggered an automatic account alert. Whoever had decided on the amounts knew what they were doing. At the bottom of the second page, Roland had written a single figure in black pen, circled twice, $31,000. Darius set the paper down. He thought about a Thursday evening 6 months ago when Petra had mentioned, while refilling her wine glass, that she had a work friend who had just moved to Charlotte, and that the city was supposed to be great for people in their industry. "Have you ever thought about relocating?" she had asked, conversational and breezy. "Just starting somewhere new?" He had said he was pretty settled where he was. She had said, "Yeah, I figured." She had moved on to another topic. He thought about a Sunday in January when she had brought up their finances over breakfast, something she almost never did, and had used the phrase restructuring twice in the same conversation. She had suggested that maybe they should talk to someone about managing their accounts separately. More flexibility, she had said. Less administrative overlap. He had told her that seemed unnecessary. She had agreed and dropped it. He thought about a night in February when she had sat beside him on the couch, not quite touching, and said something about starting fresh being good for people sometimes. He had assumed she was talking about a colleague she had mentioned earlier that week. He had not been listening the right way. He had been hearing the words without reading the blueprint underneath them. They weren't passing comments. They were measurements. She had been checking the walls for load-bearing points long before she started moving anything. He looked back at the paper on the desk. "The account the money went into," Darius said. "What do you know about it?" "Private account in her name only." Roland was leaning against the edge of his desk with his arms crossed, his voice measured. "Opened 8 months ago. Different bank than your joint accounts. She planned the timeline." "Yes." "She planned the amounts." "Somebody did," Roland said. "Those numbers aren't random. That's a specific methodology. Stay under the alert threshold, space it out. Don't create a pattern obvious enough to catch on a casual look." He paused. "That's not someone who woke up one day and got impulsive. That's someone who sat down and thought it through." Darius nodded once. He didn't look surprised because he wasn't. It had stopped feeling like an affair 3 days ago. An affair was something that happened to a marriage. What he was looking at now was a project. A staged, budgeted, carefully sequenced extraction of everything she had decided she was entitled to take. He picked up the summary and folded it in half along the center crease. He held it in his hands for a moment. "Where is the money going?" he asked. Roland uncrossed his arms and sat down in his chair. He pulled one of his monitors around so it faced them both and said, "That's the part I think we need to follow next. Because I started looking at Andre's business activity while I was pulling this together." He moved the mouse and the screen changed. "And what I found there? That's a different conversation." The gift had been sitting on the kitchen counter since Sunday. It was a small thing, a pale blue box from a skincare brand Petra's mother liked, tied with a white ribbon. Petra had ordered it online 2 weeks ago for Celeste's birthday and had promptly forgotten about it in the way she forgot about most things that weren't currently useful to her. Darius had noticed it there for 4 days, tucked beside the fruit bowl, ribbon slightly crumpled on one side. He had decided Wednesday morning that he would drop it off himself. Celeste Whitfield lived in a neighborhood of wide driveways and established oak trees about 20 minutes north of the city. Her house was a 2-story colonial with cream-painted shutters and a flower bed along the front walkway that she paid someone to maintain and accepted compliments on as though she tended it herself. She had lived there alone since Petra's father passed 8 years ago, and she had arranged the house and her life in that time with the precise, curated quality of a woman who wanted the world to understand she was doing just fine. Darius had been inside that house dozens of times. He knew where she kept the good dishes and which chair in the living room she considered hers. He knew she preferred her coffee with oat milk and a single sugar, and that she liked to eat her lunch while watching a midday news program she had very strong opinions about. He also knew that she had always been politely, consistently, almost imperceptibly dismissive of him. It was never overt. Celeste was far too composed for overt. It was in the calibration, the warmth that was always present in just the right amount, never more. The way she asked about his job with a mild, incurious smile, as though inquiring about a hobby rather than a career. The way she said his name with a fraction of a pause before it, like she was locating it first. And the way she talked about Andre, effortlessly, almost reflexively, whenever the conversation drifted toward success or ambition or the future. Andre is really onto something with this new direction of his. You know how Andre is, always thinking 3 moves ahead. Andre has that kind of energy that just attracts opportunity. She said these things the way people say weather observations, casually, without apparent intent, as though they were simply true, and she was simply noting them. Darius had absorbed all of it for 4 years without comment. Celeste opened the door in a pressed linen blouse and reading glasses pushed up on her head. She looked momentarily surprised to see him, a half-second recalibration, and then her face settled into its practiced warmth. "Darius," the small pause. "Right on schedule. This is unexpected. I know. I'm sorry to just stop by." He held up the pale blue box. "Petra left this on the counter. Your birthday gift. She's been so buried with work this week, I told her I'd drop it off since I was passing through anyway." Celeste accepted the box with a pleased smile, tilting it slightly to look at the ribbon. "Well, that's very sweet. Come in." He followed her into the living room. It was the same as always, the cream-colored sofa, the framed prints, the side table with the vase of white flowers she refreshed every week. The midday news program was muted on the television. She set the gift on the coffee table and gestured toward the sitting area. "Can I get you anything? I just made coffee." "I'd love that," Darius said. "Thank you." He sat in the chair across from hers while she went to the kitchen. He could hear the small sounds of cups being set down, the cabinet opening. He rested his hands on his knees and looked at the framed photo on the side table. Petra at her college graduation, young and bright-eyed. Celeste behind her with one hand on her shoulder. Both of them beaming. He thought about what Roland had found. The LLC. The account. The $31,000. He thought about the fact that someone had to help Petra plan the amounts. Celeste returned with 2 mugs and set them on the table with a small cloth under each. She settled into her chair, crossed her ankles, and looked at him with that calibrated warmth. "So, how have you been, Darius? Work keeping you busy?" "Always," he said. He smiled and picked up his mug. "You know how it is in Q4. Everybody wants everything moved faster." "I imagine." She said it the way she always did, mildly, politely, as though logistics were a perfectly respectable way for a man to spend his time. "How about you?" he asked. "Anything new?" She tilted her head slightly. "Oh, not much. I've been getting more sleep than I was in the summer, so that's something." She paused. "Actually, I've been spending a little time looking at some investment things, keeping busy, keeping the mind working." "That's smart," Darius said. He set his mug down. "What kind of investing?" She smiled with a touch of something that might have been pride. "Real estate, actually. There's a development opportunity that came to my attention. Well, through Andre, actually." She said his name the way she always did, effortlessly, like a fact. "He has put together something really promising. A mixed-use development. Very well researched." Darius nodded slowly. "Oh yeah? I didn't realize Andre was in real estate." "Well, he's been building toward it. You know how he is." The familiar phrase, right on cue. Always thinking ahead. He found this opportunity, and he's been very thorough about structuring it properly. He's brought in a few of us, people who believe in what he's doing. "A few of us," Darius repeated, his voice easy and curious. "Like family?" Celeste lifted her mug and nodded. "Family. A couple of close friends. He wanted people around him who understood his vision." She smiled. "Petra is involved as well. She has real confidence in it." "Good for her," Darius said. He kept his voice warm. "She's never mentioned it to me. You know how she is when she's excited about something? She keeps it close until it feels real." "What kind of capital are we talking? Just to understand the scale of what he's putting together." Celeste answered. She gave him a number. It was not a small number. It was, in fact, a number that Roland had already circled twice on a piece of paper and slid across a desk to him 48 hours ago. Darius nodded, like a man hearing interesting news for the first time. He let a moment pass. He asked one more question. A gentle, logistical question about timeline. And Celeste answered that too. And in answering it, she mentioned something about the account Petra had used to move her contribution. She said it casually, the way you say something to a person who already knows. And then she stopped. It was a small stop, just a fraction of a second where her eyes changed, something behind them shifting, recalculating. Her mouth stayed in its pleasant shape, but the warmth behind it cooled by 1 precise degree. "Well," she said, and her tone turned breezy, in the specific way a person turns breezy when they realize they have walked into a room they didn't intend to enter. "I'm sure Andre will tell you more about it when the time is right. It's still in the early stages." "Of course," Darius said. He did not press. He picked up his mug, finished the last of his coffee, and set it down gently on the cloth. He smiled. He asked her if she had plans for her birthday weekend, and she told him, and he listened with genuine-seeming interest. He stood up when it was time to stand up, thanked her for the coffee, told her the flowers looked beautiful, and meant none of it and all of it at the same time. Celeste walked him to the door. Her smile was back to its usual calibration. Warm, contained, correct. "Tell Petra I said thank you for the gift," she said. "I will," Darius said. "You enjoy it." He walked down the front path to his car. He did not look back. He drove for 4 minutes before he pulled into a gas station and stopped. He sat with the engine running and his hands on the wheel and let everything settle into its proper arrangement. Celeste had invested in Andre's venture. Petra had invested in Andre's venture. Petra's investment had come from an account that Roland had traced directly back to the drained joint savings. $31,000 moved in careful increments, shaped precisely to avoid detection. This was not an affair that had grown into a financial complication. This was a coordinated plan that had been running for the better part of 2 years, with 3 people at the table and 1 person kept deliberately outside the room. Andre had the scheme. Petra had the access. Celeste had the blessing. And, it turned out, a personal stake. They had built it together, quietly, methodically, using the money Darius had earned and the trust he had offered freely and the stability he had spent his adult life constructing. He sat there for another minute. The gas station hummed around him, a car pulling in, a door chime, the distant sound of a pump clicking. Then Darius put the car in drive and pulled back onto the road. She had set the table. That was the first thing Darius noticed when he walked through the front door that evening, the actual table. Not the kitchen counter where they had been eating for months. 2 place settings, the good plates, candles lit in the middle. Something on the stove smelling like the herb chicken she used to make on Sundays when they were first married. He stood in the entryway for a moment and took it in. Petra came out of the kitchen wearing a soft gray wrap top and her hair down. She smiled at him, not the distracted, reflexive smile he had grown used to, but the full one, the one she deployed when she needed something to land correctly. "Hey," she said, "I thought we could actually eat together tonight." "Looks great," he said. He hung up his jacket. "Smells even better." They sat down. She served the food herself, poured the wine herself, asked him about his day with a quality of attention he hadn't felt from her in a long time. He answered easily. He asked about hers. She told him about a campaign presentation. He listened. For a while it was almost like something it used to be. He let it be that. After the plates were mostly cleared and the wine was half gone, Petra set down her glass and folded her hands on the table in front of her. It was a prepared gesture. He recognized it the way you recognize a door opening. "I want to talk to you about something," she said. "Something I've been putting off saying because I didn't know how." "Okay," Darius said. He held his glass loosely and waited. "I've been feeling really alone in this marriage." She said it evenly, like something rehearsed, until it sounded unrehearsed. "For a while now. And I don't think that's anyone's fault exactly. I think we've both been busy, both been in our own heads. But I've tried to reach you a few times and it just—" She paused. "Let the silence do the work. It just hasn't felt like you've been here." Darius looked at her. He kept his face open and attentive. "I've been lonely, Darius, and I think if we're being honest, we've drifted. Both of us. Both of us." There it was, the load-bearing phrase, the one that distributed the weight evenly before she moved it entirely onto him. She continued. She talked about emotional distance. She talked about feeling like roommates. She said she had tried. She wanted him to hear that. She had genuinely tried to close the gap. But there were only so many times a person could reach before they stopped reaching. Her voice stayed measured and sad, in the way that performed sadness stays measured. She was good at it. He had always known she was good at it. He waited until she was done. "How long have you felt this way?" he asked. "About a year," she said. "Maybe a little more." He nodded slowly. A year. She had landed on a year. Clean, sympathetic. Long enough to establish suffering without requiring her to account for what had been running for 22 months before she decided to sit down at this table with candles and herb chicken and the full version of her smile. "I hear you," he said. "I'm glad you told me." Petra's shoulders dropped a fraction. Not dramatically, just enough. The relief of a person who expected resistance and found none. "I think we should try counseling," she said. "A couples therapist. Someone neutral who can help us communicate." She reached across the table and touched his hand. "I don't want to just walk away from this without trying." He looked at her hand on his. He thought about the gas station that afternoon. The number Celeste had said so casually. The account Roland had circled twice. He thought about the black Audi pulling away from the curb. "I think that's a good idea," he said. She blinked. Just once. A small flash of surprise before her composure reset. "Yeah?" "Yeah." He turned his hand over and briefly pressed hers before letting go. "I'll take care of it. I'll find someone and book it." The relief that moved across Petra's face was the most honest thing she had shown him all evening. It was not the relief of a woman who hoped to save her marriage. It was the relief of a woman who had just confirmed her exit was going smoothly. She believed she was driving. He helped clear the table after that. They talked about small things, nothing that mattered, nothing that would be remembered. Petra seemed lighter than she had in months. She laughed at something he said. She went to bed early, telling him she was tired but that the evening had been good. He agreed that it had. He waited until he heard the bedroom door close. Then he sat down at the kitchen table with his phone and found a family therapist with a group session room and made an appointment for the following Thursday evening. He confirmed it by email. Then he called Roland. Roland picked up on the second ring. "She made her pitch tonight," Darius said quietly. "Couples therapy. Blames mutual drift. Said it's been about a year." "A year," Roland repeated. 22 months, Darius said. "I also got confirmation today on the LLC founding date. Same month as your promotion." "Same month." Darius looked at the candle still burning low on the table. "I know enough," he said. "Start setting up the room." The attorney's name was Pamela Osei. She had a small office on the 4th floor of a building downtown. Warm brown furniture, and the kind of stillness that came from a woman who had heard everything and was no longer surprised by any of it. Roland had worked with her twice before and trusted her completely. Darius sat across from her on Tuesday afternoon with a folder Roland had prepared. Phone records, the hotel confirmation, the forensic account summary, Roland's audit of Andre's LLC. He laid it out in the order it happened. Pamela read without interrupting. When she finished, she set the last page down and looked at him. "The fraudulent asset transfer is our strongest position," she said. "The $31,000 moved in increments into an undisclosed account, used to fund a third party's investment vehicle." She tapped the page. "That is not marital drift. That is financial misconduct, and it changes the shape of the settlement considerably. I want her to understand that before she gets an attorney," Darius said. "Not to hurt her, just so she understands why fighting it is not a good use of her time." Pamela looked at him for a moment. "The filing is ready," she said. "I can have it served whenever you give the word." "Thursday evening," he said. "After 6. She wrote it down. The forensic accountant, a quiet man named Curtis who wore reading glasses pushed up on his forehead and spoke in clean, economical sentences, walked Darius through the documentation summary the following morning. The LLC was a problem, he said. Not just for Petra, for Andre, too. 2 of the other investors had already begun asking questions that didn't have clean answers, and the structure Andre had used, the one Petra's money had helped capitalize, was not going to survive scrutiny. Curtis had prepared a 1-page summary. It was precise and devastating in the way that true things often are. "This summary," Darius said. "You stand behind every number on it?" "Everyone," Curtis said. Darius thanked him and drove back to the office. He ate lunch at his desk and solved a routing problem that had been sitting in his queue since Monday. Then, at 2:15 in the afternoon, he made 3 phone calls. He called Andre first. Andre picked up with the easy warmth of a man who had no reason to be guarded. "D, what's good? I need a favor." Darius said. He kept his voice light, just two brothers talking. Petra and I are doing a counseling session Thursday evening, trying to work through some things. I want family there, people who know us both, and want us to be okay. He paused. I also heard something recently about an investment opportunity you've been putting together. I'd love to hear about it from you directly. I want to support what you're building, man. There was a beat. Short, small, barely anything. Then Andre laughed, relaxed and generous. Of course, man. That means a lot. I'll be there. And yeah, we'll talk about the deal. It's going to be a good thing for this family. I know it is, Darius said. Thursday at 6. I'll text you the address. He ended the call and sat with it for exactly 3 seconds. Then he called Celeste. He was warm. He was earnest. He told her that he loved Petra, and that he was scared of losing her, and that he believed having people around who loved them both might help. He told her the session was his idea, that he was the one trying. His voice carried just enough vulnerability to be convincing, and just enough steadiness to be credible. Celeste softened the way people do when they believe they are watching something they predicted come true. Of course, Darius, she said. Of course I'll be there. I think it's very mature of you to take this step. Thank you, he said. It means a lot to have your support. He put the phone down. Then he called his mother. June answered on the first ring, the way she always did. Hey, baby. Hey, Mama. He closed his office door. He sat down. And then he told her everything. The Friday outside the building, the phone records, the hotel, the $31,000, Celeste's investment, Andre's LLC, the founding date, the full 22 months. He spoke slowly and clearly and left nothing out. June did not make a sound, not one. She simply listened with the weight of a woman who had spent 67 years learning the difference between things that surprised her and things that only confirmed what she had always quietly feared. When Darius finished, the line was silent for a long moment. Then June said, "Where do I go?" 4 words, no tears in them, no wobble. Just a woman picking up the only thing she needed to carry into the room. Darius told her the address. She said she'd be there. She said she loved him. She hung up. That night, after Petra went to bed, Darius sat at the kitchen table with the full documentation spread in front of him. He organized it the way he organized everything. By sequence, by weight, by the order in which each piece closed a door. The hotel confirmation went first. The phone records went second. Roland's forensic account summary, the one with the $31,000 traced in clean columns, went third. Curtis's one-page LLC summary went fourth. He squared the edges of each stack. He put them in a single folder. He set the folder beside his bag. Then he turned off the kitchen light and went to bed. The therapist's name was Dr. Anita Webb. Her office was on the second floor of a quiet medical building. Soft carpet, neutral walls, 2 couches arranged across from each other with a low table between them, a box of tissues on the table, a small lamp in the corner that kept the room from feeling too bright. Petra arrived first. She walked in looking composed and carefully put together. A burgundy wrap dress, her hair down, small gold earrings. She squeezed Darius's arm when she saw him already seated. Her eyes were warm in the way they got when she believed she was winning something without having to fight for it. "I'm glad we're doing this," she said quietly. "Me too," Darius said. He meant something entirely different. Celeste came in 2 minutes later, carrying herself the way she always did. Spine straight, expression pleasant, the permanent posture of a woman who believed she was always the most composed person in any room. She kissed Petra on the cheek. She nodded at Darius with the small, calibrated warmth she had always reserved for him. Just enough to be polite. Never enough to be real. "This took courage," she told him, and settled onto the couch beside Petra. Andre arrived at 6:04. He came through the door with his usual energy. Easy smile, a quick scan of the room, the practiced entrance of a man who had spent his whole life making sure people were glad to see him. His eyes moved to Darius first, and something in Darius's stillness made Andre's smile flicker. Just for a second. A half-step of hesitation that he covered immediately with a wider grin and an outstretched hand. "D." He clasped Darius's hand. "I'm here, man. Whatever you need." "I know," Darius said. "Sit down." Andre sat. Then the door opened again. June walked in. She was wearing her church cardigan, the dark green one, and her reading glasses on a chain around her neck. And she moved through the doorway with the unhurried certainty of a woman who knew exactly why she was there. She did not look at Petra. She did not look at Celeste. She looked at Darius first, and something passed between them. Quiet and solid, a thing that needed no words. Then she looked at Andre. Andre's face did not just change. It collapsed inward. The smile gone, the ease gone. Something underneath suddenly exposed that he could not perform his way back over. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. June sat down in the chair closest to the door and folded her hands in her lap and said nothing. Dr. Webb opened the floor. Darius leaned forward and set the folder on the table. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. He spoke the way he managed everything, with the calm, unhurried precision of a man who had measured every word before he arrived. "I want to walk everyone through a timeline," he said. He placed the first page on the table, the phone records. 22 months of Andre's number appearing on Petra's log. Dates highlighted in yellow, clustered with clean regularity around every work trip Darius had taken. "This didn't start 8 months ago," he said. "It started 22 months ago." Petra's expression shifted, a small tightening around her eyes. He placed the second page down. The hotel confirmation. Andre Cole. The boutique property 40 minutes from their home. Reserved on the same weekend, Petra told Darius she was staying at her mother's because she needed a break. "That was 14 months ago," Darius said. "I was in Atlanta." Andre leaned back slowly. "D, come on. Let's not do this like—" "I'm not done," Darius said. He did not look at Andre. The third page. Roland's forensic summary. The $31,000 moved from their joint savings in careful, alert-dodging increments across 8 months. Every transaction traced to a private account, and from there, to the capitalization of a real estate investment vehicle. Petra's mouth opened, closed. "That's our money, Petra," Darius said. "Our savings. You moved it while I was sleeping in the same house." "Darius, I think if we could just—" she started. "There's one more page." He placed the last one down. Curtis's summary. The LLC. Its founding date circled in red. 2 years ago, the same month Darius had been promoted and received his raise. The structural irregularities. The investor complaints already forming. The exposure that was not a question of if, but when. The room was very quiet. Celeste was looking at the floor. Andre's jaw was tight, his hands clasped between his knees. "You don't understand the full picture of how the deal is structured," he said. His voice was still trying to find its old register. Reasonable, older brother, steady. "There are details you're not—" "I understand every detail," Darius said. He sat back. He was finished. Everyone in the room seemed to understand at the same moment that June had not yet spoken. She took her time. She looked at her older son the way only a mother can look at someone, with the full knowledge of every version of him that had ever existed, and the grief of watching what had grown instead. "I have thought about what I wanted to say to you," she said. Her voice was low and even. "And I decided I only need to say a few things." Andre looked at her. For the first time all evening, he looked like he was actually present. No performance, no recovery. just a man waiting to receive something he already knew he deserved. "I raised you with everything I had," June said. "Same house, same values, same words every morning before school. Be honest, work hard, protect your family." She paused. "You used all of that as a costume, Andre. You wore what I taught you just long enough for people to trust you. And then you took from the one person in this family who never once looked at you as anything less than a brother." Andre's eyes were wet. "You didn't fall into this," she said. "You planned it. You planned it the month your brother got ahead of you, because you could not stand it." She let that sit. "I know you. I know exactly what that was." She stood up. "I love you because you are my son," she said. "But I am done." She walked to the door. She did not look at him again. The door closed softly behind her. The room felt emptied of something that was not coming back. Darius reached into the folder one final time. He slid the divorce filing across the table and set it in front of Petra. She stared at it. Her hands were very still. "I moved out," he said. "Over the last 2 weekends, while you were working." He stood, straightened his jacket. "My attorney's name is on the second page. She'll explain why contesting the asset claim is not a good strategy." He picked up his folder. He walked out of the office. The building's front door opened into the evening air. Cool, still, the city moving around him at its ordinary pace, indifferent to everything that had just happened inside. Darius walked to his car. He got in. He closed the door. He sat in the quiet for a moment, both hands resting on the wheel, not gripping it. Outside, a bus went past. Somewhere nearby, someone was laughing. The streetlight above him clicked on. Darius took one slow breath. He started the car and drove away. 3 months after the session, Andre called June on a Tuesday. She let it ring. He called again that same evening. She was reading in her chair by the window, the small lamp on, her tea going cold on the side table. And she watched his name light up her phone screen and let it ring until it stopped. He called 4 more times over the following week. She let all of them ring. On the 8th call, she picked up. "Mama?" His voice was tired, stripped down. None of the old warmth that usually coated everything he said. "Andre," she said, "I just want you to understand. You want me to tell you that I still see you the way I used to," June said. Her voice was quiet and steady, the same as it had been in that office. "That's what you're calling for? You want to know if there's something left that you didn't spend?" Silence. "There isn't," she said. "I love you. I will always love you. But you should not call this number again looking for something I cannot give you anymore." She hung up. He called once more, 2 days later. She did not pick up. She has not picked up since. The civil complaint was filed 6 weeks after the session. 2 investors, then a third. The paperwork moved the way paperwork does when the documentation trail is clean and the LLC's founding is already on record, steadily, without mercy, closing off every side door Andre might have used to walk out clean. His attorney was not cheap, but she was not optimistic either. What Andre didn't understand, not at first, was why the calls stopped before the lawsuit did. The investors were one thing, but the friends, the acquaintances, the networking contacts, the guys who always had room for him at the table and laughed at his stories and floated him when he was short, they went quiet in a way that felt personal. It was personal. He just didn't see the mechanism. Darius had never spoken loudly on Andre's behalf. He had never made speeches or written endorsements. He had simply been present, steady, respected, the younger brother who had clearly made something of himself. And that presence had worked on the people around Andre like a silent voucher. If Darius is good, and Darius's brother is in the room, then Andre must be worth something too. That voucher was gone now. Rooms felt smaller. He couldn't figure out why at first. Same rooms, same faces, but something in the atmosphere had changed. Some willingness to give him the benefit of the doubt that used to just be there. like oxygen, like something he'd never had to think about producing himself. He understood, eventually. Understanding it didn't help. Petra's settlement was finalized 11 weeks after the session. Her attorney had explained it carefully, twice, and Petra had sat through both explanations with her hands folded in her lap and the careful expression of someone keeping their face neutral because the alternative was worse. The fraudulent asset transfer, documented, traced, forensically summarized by Roland's contact, left almost no room to negotiate. The $31,000 was not just a number. It was evidence of intent. Judges noticed intent. She moved back to her mother's house on a Saturday in November. 2 carloads. Most of what she kept was small. Clothes, her work things, a few items she hadn't been able to leave. Celeste's house was a beautiful house. It had always been a beautiful house. But it had a different quality now. Too quiet, too careful. 2 women moving around each other in the kitchen in the morning with the full awareness that they were both living inside the consequences of the same decision. Celeste had lost $40,000 in the venture. She did not say so often. She didn't have to. The math had a way of arriving on its own. In the pauses, in the way she looked at the counter instead of at Petra when they talked, in the small adjustments she made to her budget that she never had to make before. One evening in December, they were doing dishes. The window above the sink was dark, the neighborhood quiet outside. Celeste handed Petra a plate to dry and said, without preamble, "You didn't leave a bad man." Petra kept drying. "You left a good one," Celeste said, "because you thought you could do better." She rinsed another dish. "You were wrong." Neither of them said anything after that. The water ran. The window stayed dark. They finished the dishes and went to their separate rooms, and that was that. 14 months after the session, Darius was running the logistics division at a regional freight company 3 times the size of his last one. The role had come through a colleague, someone who had watched him work for years and simply called when the position opened. He ran on Saturday mornings, a 4-mile loop, same route, headphones in, the city still mostly asleep around him. Thursday evenings he had dinner with Roland. They didn't always talk about anything important. That was the point. He called June twice a week, same as he had since he was 19. Tuesday evenings and Sunday mornings. She answered every time. On a Friday evening in late spring, Darius sat at his kitchen table. The window was cracked, letting in a thin thread of night air. A logistics report was open in front of him. A routing inefficiency he'd been picking at for 2 days. The kind of problem that had a clean answer somewhere inside it if you just gave it the right attention. A glass of bourbon sat at his elbow, mostly untouched. He read through the numbers. He found the error, a missed handoff point, a cascading delay that looked random until you traced it back to the source. He picked up his pen. He fixed it. He sat back. The apartment was quiet. The city moved outside his window at its ordinary pace. Darius took a slow sip of bourbon and looked at the corrected page. He was not angry. He was free. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.